obviously Ronnie James Dio is a pretty big part of your past and your story here in the rock business. I don't
Yeah.
really like when people phrase the question in the way of, what's your favorite moment or anything like that. But when I say Ronnie James Dio, what are the first things that really come to mind for you? It could be just little small moments or, random anecdotes.
Well, he is just, I mean, he was just very inspiring. He really, that's a really good question, bro. It's hard to lock it down into like one thought, but in in a short amount of time, when you would spend it with Ron, you would be inspired to be a better. He definitely made everybody better around him, and he inspired. He demanded actually that you put your best foot forward, and you wanted to. It's like he's got. This is one of those guys that I discovered by chance. When I was younger, and and then playing in a band with him. It was like, how lucky is that? Um, um, but he loved he was very simple. He loved what he did, and he did it 24/7. The only other thing that he basically would do is he loved sports. He would listen to. I I can just see him right now in his house, in his kitchen. He might be having a Guinness or something, and he'd have a little transistor radio on his kitchen table, and you'd go over there in the morning, he'd be listening to sports radio, and it was weird. He was just like really into that, and he was also really into crossword puzzles. Like when I was recording with him, he was in the studio with me all the time, like every day. We'd all go to the studio together, and if I was doing guitars, it was that. But he'd be sitting there with a crossword puzzle on the side of the console, and that was his place where he would just kind of, you know, you'd ask him, "Hey, what do you think?" He would go, "Oh, let's hear it." He'd get his head out of the crosswords and basically want to, listen to something, and hopefully, he was happy with it. Which with me, I was really lucky. He liked what I was bringing. So, um, but he just he was so awesome to watch on stage. I became definitely inspired by how he would own the stage, so much. So yeah, it was. I could say, the first thing that comes to mind with Ronnie is, beer or something, because the first time I met him, we went to a pub. Then the second time I met him about 10 years later was when I actually joined. Um, we met at a pub, and it was like over a beer. So it's just something as simple as that. But he was amazing, and he's greatly missed.
Yeah, I understand he was incredibly humble too. He would go into the booth and lay down one of the greatest metal vocals of all time and walk out and just kind of be like, ah, I think that was okay.
Yeah, yeah. He never, I mean, he was confident. He was definitely confident, but he was, how most people you get a little butterflies when the recording light comes on, and it makes you really want to, you're on the edge, on the knife edge. But Ronnie, man, he lit up in that situation. It reminds me of, what it must have been like to be around Stevie Ray Vaughan. Like the recording light comes on, or you're on stage, and it's just like locked in 100%. And that's how Ronnie was. When he'd come, he would generally want to record his vocals in a situation where there wasn't people hanging out distracting him. But he was always, anytime I was around him when he sing, he was always really, like you said, very humble, and he was confident. He wouldn't he might say, let me do that again. I want to. Maybe he might have said, let me redo that bit right there or something. But everything that he did was really good. So he was just at that point trying to please himself, make sure it was the way he wanted it to be.